before we get started, I have a weird request out there. Somebody had told me recently that some words of mine were used in I think it was an advertisement in prog rock magazine for an album or for something. The person who told me hasn't gotten back to me. Can anybody confirm or deny this? If you have the most recent issue or whatever, Anyway, let's get into why we're really here. The top 10 most anticipated albums for 2015, the second half, at least so far for me. And I want to make something clear before we get started here. This is a list that easily could have gone to 20, first of all, because there are literally just a world of great metal that's coming out in the second half of this year. And there's going to be some that are not mentioned on this list that may make a couple of you a little bit upset, such as Amorphous, either that or Slayer. Slayer's not on the list because I'm still a little iffy about it. Amorphous isn't on the list because I'm not iffy about it. I'm not worried about it at all. In fact, I think that album's going to be really good. But Amorphous to me is also very solid. These are 10 of my most anticipated albums of 2015, not necessarily those to review. So let's get started, and let's start at number 10. I'm going to tell you a little reason why I'm kind of excited about this. At number 10, we have Underworld by Symphony X. I'm excited about this because it's been a couple of years since their last album, for one. And for two, for the most part, the only thing Symphony X related that we've kind of gotten has been with Russell in Adrenaline Mob, and that's not exactly been too great. It'll be really cool to hear an entire album from this band once again, because they very seldomly seem to disappoint, especially on this run that they've been on lately. That's probably started, in the latter portions of the 1990s. They're just a really strong studio product. But I'm interested to see where they take it. I'm interested to see what they do, because every Symphony X album tends to have a bit of a different themology to it. Either that, or has something that kind of makes it a little bit more over the top, or a little bit different from the previous one. You're not going to get the same Symphony X experience twice, so to speak. Number 9, we have Niall with What Should Not Be Unearthed. This is anticipated to me mainly because of the last album. The last album that Niall gave us was definitely a grower, to say the least, in the case that, for a lot of people, it never grew on us. It never became all of that good of an album. It always just felt like really a stinker after a run of really decent work and really high-quality work. So this is an album that's very interesting to me, something that I anticipate highly whenever it comes out in August, because it's an album that has a lot riding on it. And I think that Niall is a band that has songwriting quirks about them that actually work advantageously on their behalf, that will actually allow this album, What Should Not Be Unearthed, to be definitely a comeback album, so to speak, or at least a recovery album, even though they probably don't think that that's the kind of album that it is. They're not actively going into the studio saying, okay, we have to make the recovery album. This last album didn't do so hot, because it definitely did well. It's just an album that it's a dime a dozen you find somebody who truly, really enjoys it from front to back without having some minor complaints. So in a way, it's just one of those albums that really breeds out a lot of criticism without it necessarily being an album that's just terrible. So it's really going to be interesting to see what happens with these guys with this album. And then let's move on to number 8. Number 8 is sort of a similar situation, only in reverse. We have Tesseract with Polaris. This comes out in September. And this is an album that I think is also very, very important for Tesseract, because they kind of had this membership over the course of their band's lifetime, where some people have come in, some people have left, some people have come in, some people have left. Based on who's in, seems to determine whether or not the album is fantastic, because the last album was phenomenal. It was top 10 worthy. But the stuff that was before that was just kind of like, a little bit half and half. So there has been some people that have come in, and there have been some people that have left in Tesseract's life ever since the release of their last album. And so Polaris is going to be very, very important, because it's going to let us know which Tesseract, I guess, I don't want to say showed up, because that sounds really, really demeaning. And Tesseract, by themselves, is a solid product. It just seems as though, at times, they just are capable of writing just glorious, 100%, like 9.5 out of 10 albums. And then aside from that, other times it just seems like they're writing average worth music. So it'll be really interesting to see what happens and to see which Tesseract we get and what they're able to offer us with Polaris. And I just love the title Polaris, not only because of the Megadeth idea, but also because of the star and the constellation and all of that, the astrological significance of Polaris. Number 7, we have Genexus by Fear Factory. It's another band that kind of has a little chip on its shoulder. Their last album was really, really solid until you got to the end of it, and it was something that, it was just like one bad decision. It actually caused an album's score to slip, and you would say that's nitpicky, but it was just whatever. But Fear Factory have always been very solid, very consistent. I always anticipate their releases because they're always a lot of fun to listen to. They always have a great aggressive sensibility to them, but at the same time, they also have something new really to offer the fold. There's always a little new subtle nuance that comes in during these albums where it just seems like they sort of take it up another notch and just kind of go a little bit wild. Ever since these guys have come back, it's certainly been it's been very, very welcome to have Fear Factory back and producing new material about every 2 years. It's certainly something that if you would have asked me 6 years ago, I would have said was possible, but it was going to take a lot, and obviously didn't take much considering it happened. So I'm really excited to hear what Genexus is able to offer us. Number 6, we have the Black Dahlia Murder with Abysmal. This is where I get a little concerned. I get concerned because the Black Dahlia Murder's last album was phenomenal. It was, again, top 10 worthy. So Abysmal is the album where they may not write this way, but they're definitely not going to write this way, but they're just going to keep on writing, so they could either stay on that plateau of having great and solid, phenomenal albums, or this could be one that could slip. And I'm concerned about the slippage. I'm concerned about not being as high on this album as I was for their last one. And that always concerns me because I love consistency in bands, and I love bands that once they kind of reach and find that point where their songwriting is just tight and wonderful and it's just flowing, that they just continue to do that and add little tweaks and different little aspects to that in order to really create something new every time. I'm concerned that the Black Dahlia Murder will not do that, but I think, and especially whenever you listen to their first single, I feel like they have enough innovation in mind where they can make it a great experience that's not only extremely brutal, but also is something that feels sonically new, even though it's going to have a lot of similarities to their previous work. Number 5, we have Riverside with Love, Fear, and the Time Machine. I love Riverside. They have really grown to be one of my favorite newer progressive rock bands. And Love, Fear, and the Time Machine just has a lot of potential riding on it, and it has a great album that preceded it in Shrine of New Generation Slaves. Riverside has been on a roll. And I'm loving the fact that Riverside has slowly but surely become more of a name that more and more people know. They're becoming, I don't like to say the word mainstream, but they are becoming a little bit better recognized in the progressive rock world. And I'm really looking forward to this album mostly because I feel this is a breakout album potential. Their first single really showcased that. And this is a group that's always been right there on the cusp, I feel, of breaking out and becoming a group that a lot of people not only know, but a lot of people end up really enjoying. They're definitely a lot softer than Dream Theater, but Dream Theater fans, if you're out there, check out Riverside. You may find your next favorite band. That's all I will say. Just a phenomenal product, and I think that Love, Fear, and the Time Machine will continue to do that, considering it is a concept-based album. And just whenever you think about the concept by itself, sounds pretty interesting. Number 4, we have Cattle Decapitation with the Anthropocene Extinction. This is based 100% on the fact that the songs we have gotten from this album so far are just terrific. They're absolutely incredible. They're actually sending this album to the moon based off of just how tight they are and how very, very straightforward and just destructive that they sound. So this is an album that very easily could be one of those really violent, consistent discs that just thrash and destroy their way through its very own track listing until you reach the crescendo in which you just demand to yourself that you go back to track 1 and listen to it again. This is an album that I think is anticipated for me because I've given it a pretty high expectation based off of the songs that I've heard so far. So I am a little concerned that it will maybe fall a little bit short of that. But I don't know. the way the songwriting has been on the songs that we've been delivered thus far from this group just don't seem to suggest that. So I expect that to be an album that's going to be probably pretty high up on the end of the year list. Number 3, we have Ghost with Meliora. We just got a brand new song, From the Pinnacle to the Pit, by these guys today. Sederse, of course, was a phenomenal song. Probably the best Ghost song that I've heard in their entire discography, which is really kind of a really high honor, even though there are only 3 albums and 1 EP or 2 EPs, whatever, into their career. I feel that Meliora has the real potential to be the breakout album that Advanced System should have been. I felt like their last album had that potential. They had songs such as Body and Blood that easily could have transitioned over onto either the radio. This is a band that should have taken over the world 2 or 3 years ago. And they have taken over the world in some respects. They've certainly taken over the metal world in their hearts and minds as definitely a different product, something that doesn't sound like everything else that you would expect. This is definitely a hero, a champion that a lot of us have really kind of got on the shoulders of, but they have not yet reached that huge, super massive, like, metal god status that certain people think belong to bands like Asking Alexandria. I'm not bitter. But at the same time, it's a little early to dub them metal gods, but I feel like these guys could easily be this generation's King Diamond in a way, or at least something that really amplifies the stage show along with the music to equal portions of importance, which cause for a great overall experience if you go see them live, but you can still go home and love the piss out of the albums as well. I have high expectations for this. Number 2, Lamb of God with 7 Stromengard, which is a name that I bastardized the first time I said it, and I will bastardize it whenever I review the album next week. Yeah, this is one that's coming next week, similarly to the Symphony X that was at number 10. But I feel that this is really important because we've heard half of it, practically, and it all sounds phenomenal. The song that they just released today with Chino Moreno just is aggressive as fuck, and then Chino comes in out of nowhere and does the literal blindside. It's like, this is a song where Lamb of God chases you down the alleyway, and it's toward the busy intersection, and then you think you're going to evade Lamb of God whenever you run into the busy intersection, and then Chino Moreno is an 18-wheeler that just blindsides the fuck out of you. If you don't understand that metaphor, then you need to check out the song. This is a very important album, and we have mentioned this before, based around Randy's experiences and based around the fact that we may not have had Lamb of God if a couple of decisions gone a couple of different ways a couple of years ago. It's a lot of couples and not a lot of fucking. Well, there might have been some, and not the friendly kind, but I doubt it. But this is an important album because it has to reflect that time very, very well. And it has to showcase all of that bane and all of that reform, even though none was needed. It really has to showcase that change and an experience is something that really affects us as human beings. And the songs that we have gotten, the 5 that we have gotten, have proven that already. But this is an album that has the opportunity to prove that even further with the songs that we haven't heard yet. And really, really potentially give us a curveball that we never expected. And finally, we at number 1 have Iron Maiden with the Book of Souls. This is at number 1 for a pair of reasons. Number 1, I love Iron Maiden. Number 2, this is a double album. And number 3, that scares the shit out of me. Iron Maiden's had some great albums ever since Bruce came back in 2000. Brave New World was, of course, just a phenomenal work. The Final Frontier wasn't bad. Dance of Death was, I thought, really good. And A Matter of Life and Death had its moments. But a double album of Iron Maiden scares me because there's the potential that it's a lot of filler and not enough killer. I'm excited to hear an 18-minute long song by Iron Maiden. That's really, really cool to me, unless it bores the shit out of me. And then I'm going to be really, really disappointed. So I guess the reason why this is at number 1 is because this is my must-get album of the year regardless, but at the same time, this probably has the biggest opportunity to fall short of my expectations. And that's scary because Iron Maiden is an important band, not only to heavy metal, but to me. So there's a lot to look forward to with that. And there's a lot to look forward to here in 2015. What are some of your most anticipated albums that maybe didn't make it to this list, but are going to probably be covered on this channel? Maybe you should ask me about those in the comments. I'll try to come back and answer those frequently. Let me know in the comments below, and I'll talk to you guys next time. Did you agree with the list, or what would you add to it? So let me know. I'll talk to you later. Bye.